get started. So good morning, everyone, or afternoon, wherever you are around the country today. Welcome to our webinar entitled Applying WSUD in Small Infill Developments in WA. My name is Chris Manning and I'm from Water Sensitive Cities Australia, and I'll be your host today. So first of all, I want to acknowledge the Bindal people on the Thulbulay lands, which is south of Ross River and Townsville, on whose land I am on today. I also want to acknowledge the First Nations peoples and their lands from across Australia who have and continue to play a key role in water resource management and stewardship. I pay my respects and to their elders past, present and emerging on behalf of myself and also the participants on this webinar today. So today we've got a presentation about applying WSUD in small infill developments in WA. We're lucky to have Melissa McGrath from Byrne and Associates and also Melissa Manley from Department of Communities to speak to us today. So just a little bit of quick background on the project before I hand over to the two ladies to present their parts of the webinar today. So the Water Sensitive Transition Network in WA identified the issue of applying water sensitive urban design in small infill developments as part of their plan, and they engaged Water Sensitive Cities Australia as part of our partnership agreement with them to undertake some work to look at how we can apply WSUD in small infill developments and get some better water sensitive outcomes from these developments going forward. We chose to engage Byrne and Associates, who bring a wealth of experience and knowledge to this space in WA to undertake the project, and they collaborated closely with the Department of Communities because it's the Department of Communities site that we've taken as a case study. So that's a real brief background on the project, basically, and Melissa Manley will give you a little bit more details on that in shortly. So first of all, Melissa's going to talk about the project context, background and drivers, and she's from the Department of Communities. And then Melissa McGrath from Byrne and Associates is going to talk about the detail of applying the WSUD in small infill developments. We're going to run the Q&A session at the end of this process. And I encourage you to put your questions in the Q&A function on the Zoom platform. Feel free to also interact on the chat function, but we prefer to have the questions in the Q&A session, in the Q&A function on the webinar platform. I think that's all I'm going to speak to. I don't want to steal the thunder from Melissa McGrath and Melissa Manley. So I'm going to stop sharing and let Melissa Manley take over from here.
Okay, I'll just get my screen up.
And while she's doing that, Melissa Manley is from the Department of Communities, and she's the Climate Action and Sustainability Project Manager.
Yeah. Thank you for that introduction, Chris. I'll jump straight into it. Just checking you're seeing the full screen. I'm not seeing my notes.
No, you're good.
Okay, just checking. It's a bit hard to tell on my two screens here. Anyhow, so a bit about Department of Communities over here in WA. We are quite a large department and we do provide community services. So we cover child protection, disability services, youth homelessness, as well as housing. So in our housing portfolio, we have about 40,000 homes statewide covering community housing, social housing and Aboriginal housing. And we also construct a fairly decent amount of new homes each year. And I think this year we're almost up to 400 homes that we've constructed. So in Perth, our construction covers high density infills. We do single detached homes, and we also do refurbishments on some of our larger older complexes just to bring them up to standard. But really, as a whole, we are here to hopefully improve the lives of our clients that we serve, so that whether that's you know, in the disability space or in the housing space. So when we're building homes, we want them to be low cost, robust and low maintenance. And when we say low cost, that's both in construction as well as ongoing costs, but also costs for the tenants. So we want it to be efficient in energy and efficient in water, so that the tenant is not disadvantaged by having something that is going to use a lot of water. So our Waterwise journey, it started way back in 2017, which feels like an age ago now, where we joined with the Water Corporation to start the Waterwise social housing program. And the first phase of this program, we looked at the top 1,000 water using tenants in Perth Metro. And we wanted to find out why they were using so much water. And we kind of came across three things, which probably not too surprising. There were a lot of older homes in this cohort that had older fixtures and fittings, so toilets that were just using way more water than they needed to, had old taps and old shower heads that were just not water-wise. So we went through and we upgraded those homes, and we did see a massive water saving just from doing that. The other thing that we found was there was a lot of unreported leaks that we went through and repaired. And we also have an education component in this program as well, to actually try and drive those waterwise behaviours with our tenants. So we've tried to go at it at a few different angles. And the main idea was to try and reduce water use from Water Corporation's side, and we wanted to improve livability and affordability. And through this process, we actually started embedding Waterwise standards into our processes. So our maintenance regime now, when a toilet or a shower head gets replaced, it is replaced with a Waterwise one. And we also have embedded Waterwise standards into our construction process just on the internal of the house. So about a year or two after we started this, the initial project, along came the Waterwise Perth Action Plan, and we're now actually in the second action plan, which is called Kep Catajan Gabi Catajan. Bit of a tongue twister, that one. And this kind of formalised our actions as a department of where we wanted to go in this Waterwise journey. So we actually have two targets that we contribute to through Kep Catajan. The first one is the initial program, where we're aiming to retrofit at 10,000 properties statewide with the Waterwise fixtures and fittings. And then the second one is that 100% of government-led urban development is Waterwise, and that's kind of where this project fits in. Is that we want to embed these Waterwise outcomes into our design and construction process. So you can see there's a few actions that we've got there that we contribute to, but it all centres around providing those Waterwise outcomes for our tenants through that construction process. So the next step in our Waterwise journey is embedding these Waterwise water sensitive urban design elements into this process. And we're hoping that also coming out of the back of this is that as we start to embed it in our construction process, we do work with quite a number of larger builders here in Perth, is that we can hopefully influence and mainstream these into their standard designs. So that's sort of one of the pathways that I'd like to go down, is that as we embed it across the board, hopefully the builders will come along the journey and it'll filter out into the broader construction space here in WA. So I'll just give you a little bit of a background around the actual project. So I've just listed there the three project objectives as they stand in the project documentation, but from community's point of view is this project and the work that Josh Byrne and Associates is doing for us is we really want to answer the question is, how can we fit this water sensitive urban design into our design and construction process? Where does it fit in that process? How do we embed it so that it is mainstreamed and that it is done and it's not a tack onto our standard process? And we also want to have a look at the social and economic benefits of water sensitive urban design and including those principles in our construction process. So that's sort of two of our aims that we're hoping to get out of this project. And Melissa and Josh Burns have done a great job at tackling and trying to answer these questions for us. So the site, Aurea Boulevard, Golden Bay. So for those of you who are not familiar, Golden Bay is a coastal suburb in the south of Perth. It's about 60 kilometres south of the Perth CBD. I'm not sure whether you can see it, but there's a yellow highlighted bit, which is our project site, and not too far from the beach, probably about 10-15 minute walk to the beach there. But the design brief that our design team were given is that this needs to be a kind of like a showcase community. So it's architecturally designed. It will be 7-star NABERS. We're constructing it out of SIP panels. So they're structurally insulated panels. So a little bit different to our standard double brick that we normally do here in WA. And it's going to have solar panels, but the main thing is that these 12 sites are actually going to be seniors housing. So when they designed it, they included aiding with choice guidelines, and they wanted to really create a community feel here at this. Whilst they're green title blocks, we wanted to create a community feel so that they weren't just seniors living in one block with a little fence in backyard. So trying to provide opportunities for them to interact in that setting. So Golden Bay, a little bit more about the site itself. So the front of the site faces north, and the back of the site where the main communal area is faces south. There are some commercial areas here in the purple section. So we've got a childcare centre and some shops, and there's also some shops across the other side of the road. We've also got a large park and a skate park there, and there is a school that is close by. Here is a picture of the block. So you can see there that they are raised blocks. So they've got stairs going up to them at the front, and then they've got the railing fences. And then we've got the back alleyway, and the back alleyway you can see is just garage after garage after garage, which isn't great as you're driving along. It's very impersonal. So part of the design that has been done is to try and soften that on our side of the laneway, so that we aren't just having that garage along that section. And that's part of the work that Melissa has done, and she'll go through that in her design. Now, I've ripped through that very quickly, and I'll hand over to Melissa, and if you have any questions, pop it in the Q&A function, and I'll get to it at the end. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Mel.
Thanks, Melissa Manley. While Melissa McGrath is bringing her presentation up, she's the Principal of Sustainability at Byrne and Associates, for those of you who've not met her before. Melissa.
Thank you, Chris. Okay. Oops. How's that? Everybody see the presentation okay? Yep. All right. So thank you, Chris and Mel, for the introduction there. So I just wanted to start, I guess, by giving a little bit of an overview of, I guess, our role within the project. So from, I guess, JBA's perspective, as Chris said, we were engaged to, I guess, have a look at how we can support the delivery of water sensitive infill development in WA. And this, as Chris mentioned, is broadly linked to the delivery of the Water Sensitive Transition Network's transition strategy and action plan. So as part of this, what we've been looking at as part of the Golden Bay project is really trying to explore the barriers to water-sensitive urban design implementation, and particularly during the design, tender, construction and establishment processes. What I'm going to talk to you about today is mainly focused on the design phase. So what we've been able to do is work through that kind of concept design for water sensitive urban design for the site, and then have a lot of project collaboration to work through some of the learnings and understandings coming out of that process. So there's more to come with the project, and that's what I wanted to let you know today as well, is that we'll be having more learnings as we go along to understand how we can better implement during tender construction and establishment processes, and I'll get to that later on. As Mel introduced as well, so this is Department of Community site located in Golden Bay. All right, so I just want to talk you through now how we went about the concept development with the project team. The process that I'm going to talk to you through is by no means the best way to do it, but this is just how we've approached the site. And this is something that we're trying to, I guess, document this process and think about how we can best share an outline of the approach, or tweak it in ways that best suit Department of Community's needs. And that's probably one of the key outcomes that we're looking at as part of this project. So to commence our process in terms of deciding what water sensitive urban design elements would best be suited for the site, we conducted a site visit. So we headed down there, walked the site, and really just got a feel for what could be possible here in terms of that local context and character. So as Mel mentioned, it's got real walkable access locally to amenities, to the beach. It's a low density residential area. It's got connectivity to existing POS quite close to the site, which is a great opportunity for urban greening connection. The site has got north-facing aspect, so it's really can benefit from that climate resilient design for the built form. There is that slight elevation from the street, as Mel mentioned as well. So we've got that 1 metre height with the retaining wall, but otherwise than that, the site's quite flattened out and levelled. So they're the sort of things that we're thinking about as we're walking along. How can we, utilise these aspects here and implement some design elements to suit that physical and I guess cultural setting of the site there. We also conducted some detailed mapping to really understand what the vegetation and soils are in the area. So this is really to inform, I guess, what sort of plant palette would be suitable in terms of water-wise locally native species that can help with some urban greening. At the same time as doing this kind of physical and mapping background site analysis, we also do a comprehensive background review on, I guess, the leading local government and state, or this is in the City of Rockingham, and also the state government policies and strategies. So looking at any, I guess, design options that might need to be guided by the current direction of both the local and state direction. Also, as Mel mentioned, making sure that we're aligning with the Department of Community's ageing strategy, so ageing with choice, the WA strategy, housing strategy and senior strategy, and also because the location is near or as part of the kind of broader or nearby the Peat development site, so looking at, I guess, the broader design guidelines and recommendations as part of that broader urban infill that's been, urban development that's been happening around the site there. Okay, so then it's just a photo from our site visit, similar to what we saw before. So just looking at the site in its context. So at the same time as we were conducting our site analysis, as Mel mentioned, this is to be an architecturally designed development. So at the same time, the architects developing some amazing concepts for their work with the site. So this is just a render from what RAD, the architects, were producing as part of their design brief. So when we're looking at our water sensitive design, at this stage in of the process, we were, I guess, working with the built form that had been kind of decided with RAD and the Department of Communities team, and that was already quite evolved by the time that we were, or quite evolving, I guess, by the time we came in, which is one of the things that we'll get to in the moment of discussing it, as about that process and timing for implementing WSUD. So based on that background review, the site analysis, the needs of Department of Communities and the future community, and also the kind of architectural design that's going on, we then defined a set of guiding principles that we felt would be really useful, I guess, to guide the whole project team in how we're responding to the site. So I've listed these here. So the first one we noted was hydration of the landscape. So I guess really making the use of any outsourced infiltration opportunities, really contributing to urban greening, canopy cover, and livability and mitigation of urban heat. So we're really looking at a blank canvas here and a real opportunity to make it a really beautiful place for these seniors to live. We also highlighted the fact that the design needs to be responsive to that local physical context. So we're seeing that there might be some opportunity to establish some green networks with that nearby POS, enhancing biodiversity and connectivity, and also, I guess, making sure that any landscape response and water-sensitive urban design response is climate resilient and regenerative. I think really key for this site, and is something that came up a lot in our discussions, and I'll talk you through this when we get through the design, is that the design really needs to be responsive to the community. And here we're looking at seniors living. So it's just, it really does impact on some of those design choices that need to be implemented. So we're looking for year-round comfort, interaction with neighbours, and having ability to garden and interact with nature, I guess. Improved amenity, a softening of the landscape, as Mel mentioned, and I guess just having a sense of place for these people that are going to live here, and something that's low maintenance and, of course, cost sensitive. So also the notes that Mel touched on earlier. Reducing water demand via water sensitive urban design. So that's also a key, aspect of Department of Communities Waterwise journey. So continuing on with that. And then another final principle we thought we could integrate was looking at some smart systems. So how can we kind of understand some of these elements that we want to implement? Particularly, is there an opportunity to monitor urban heat and water use and understand the outcomes of that? So from that, we kind of, I guess, then cherry picked a whole bunch of design elements that we thought could be suitable for the site and the requirements. So based on the principles and that background understanding, and I think the way we kind of approached it then was like, what can we, best implement within the site, with these different elements here. So I've just listed, these probably just provide a little bit more detail on those principles that we went through, and some of the, I guess, more specific design elements that we would want to implement there. And this is supported, I guess, by some precedent imagery that the landscape architect team within JBA has also assisted throughout this design process of, I guess, helping to give the project team, and I guess, an idea about what we're thinking about when we're looking at some of these design elements. I won't go through this list now because it probably makes more sense for me to talk to them as we go through some of the design plans and cross sections. So I'm going to take you through those now. So that's the next slide here, is just that indicative plant palette that I said that we were looking at based on, the local soils and vegetation complexes, but also having that opportunity to introduce productive gardens and the benefits that that would provide to elderly residents as well. So when we first went about having a look at how we have a WSUD concept plan here, we really thought that we would be best to work with that existing plan, that given that Department of Communities had done a lot of work in thinking about this kind of communal access area at the back of the buildings here, and that also the architects had already moved quite a far way along in their kind of concept design there. So for our first instance, we thought, okay, let's work with this existing plan and have a look at where we can implement these key items that we feel are really important to the site. So we've got, incidental paths coming through this kind of communal corner up here, making use of a communal garden up in this space here, maybe some informal play for, livability aspects as well. Maybe having some microclimate sensors in this area just to understand different surface treatments. Along here, we're looking at kind of at the back rear here in the visitor bays, looking at some possibility for permeable paving and outsource infiltration. Perhaps the implementation of a rainwater tank. looking at, I guess, softening some of these lines around here and having some vertical greening opportunities. And then at the back here, implementing, I guess, where we can, some green garden space. So that's just the continuation of the plan there. Sorry, it's too hard to fit it on the one slide because it's too long, so I've just split it over two. So, so this is just a cross section, I guess, of where we got to at the very beginning, working with what we've got. So an additional thing is probably looking at some incorporation of micro swales, and then definitely those trees for shade there. So these were informed from our internal and broader project team discussions. As I said, we were working with the existing plans. We delivered this to our project steering group, and we got the feedback that this was not challenging the norm enough, which is fair enough, and it wasn't. So there's still too much hard stand within the site. We really hadn't, quite tried to see where we could implement more water sensitive urban design for this. So we went, fair enough, I think that's spot on. And we were probably just a bit tiptoeing around, I guess, that design process that had already been underway. So then we went back and did 2 additional plans looking at really water-wise options. And for this, we felt that it was an opportunity, I guess, to change the built form to better suit water-sensitive urban design outcomes. And we played around with the architect's layout and the kind of back communal portion of the site here, as we thought that this would be the better opportunity for us to be able to implement more opportunities. So in particular, if we moved the carport up at the back of the house here, opened up the carport, so perhaps didn't have it as a closed-in structure, we might be able to have more green connectivity, more garden space, I guess more communal green areas at the back here for residents to utilise. We also looked at implementing, these green corridors and deciduous trees. So changing, I guess, making sure there's these kind of green connectivity elements in between each of the groups there. Having, I guess, optimizing garden space, and then also popping in an additional kind of communal garden area here onto the side. Moving some visitor bays to the back here and having some permeable paving again, but more shade trees, additional garden beds in the middle of the whole development site there as well. So this is what that looks like in a cross-section display. So you can see here just that kind of green connectivity throughout the site with those internal corridors, having that infiltration, localized infiltration capacity, rainwater tank, and always local native waterwise planting, and then the possibility of some localized infiltration from rainwater collected from the garage roof. So that's just a summary there, I guess, of what we were really looking at for this is, pushing that communal access area further back, but having that increased private space at the back really optimised that water sensitive urban design or urban greening and infiltration opportunities at the back of the house. Our waterwise concept B, we switched it around and actually pulled all the car parking right back and actually asked if we could remove visitor bays altogether. So during our site analysis, we found that there was more than enough parking around the perimeter of the site and along, most of the, northern area in particular and near the commercial area. So we thought, well, let's pull back that visitor parking because that's one thing we want less. It's a really walkable area, less parking. Elderly people don't tend to drive as much. There's still parking for visitors and carers to visit. So we pulled that right back and then instead implemented these garden areas where the visitor parking will be. So we presented these to Department of Communities and the architect, and rightly so, with this feedback, this time we'd gone too far. So we'd moved around that design that was really well too advanced within the process, and it wasn't really the opportunity now to be changing that built form layout, which is completely fair enough. So we'd probably gone too far with our advice from their reference group and tried to, I guess, tweak that overall built form design, which had already been underway, which we'll talk about that in the lessons learned as well when we get further along. So this is where we get to with the agreed design, so where we're at now. So what we've done is we've we've pulled together all the feedback from our reference group, communities, the architect, and we've presented a design here that we'll see, hopefully it will be able to be implemented in some form. It's currently with the landscape architects to, I guess, flesh out in more detail about what this might look like. So it's probably easy to talk through in the cross section. So we've still got that front garden aspect there, that tree canopy. We've allowed still some garden beds and connectivity along the side there. Really hoping to have a deciduous tree in the courtyard so that the housing can still have that solar gain in winter, but having that beautiful shade. Still making sure though it is kind of low maintenance, which may be a little bit difficult if it is deciduous, meaning there might be a bit of leaf litter for the residents to pick up. So that's something obviously we need to work through. I guess still trying to have some permeable materials where possible. Having, I guess, this infiltration cells down the end here, and I guess that more garden space at the back, and still having that communal connectivity at the rear there of the site. So this was the preferred option, and everybody's agreed that this is how we'll go. We have decided that the rainwater tanks will be removed for now, as it's probably not the best option. The productive gardens are still definitely included, but they'll be more integrated within that general communal space rather than, you know, integrated at numerous points throughout the site. Car bays and visitor bays do need to remain, and that's for very, I guess, apparent reasons, that it is elderly housing. So we need to make that access for carers and, you know, the like to be really easy. As I said, permeable paving to be considered, but also recent discussions, we've looked at maybe having an opportunity for grey water reuse for consideration depending on cost, and ward-wise gardens and greening wherever possible. Okay, so some of the challenges that we've I guess gone through as part of this process, and it's been really great working with Mel and the team, because we've been able to, I guess, document this process together. So we've all, you know, after our meetings, we've gone away and we've both tried to think about, you know, what could we do better? What were some of the challenges? How do we overcome these? And Mel and I have both been documenting, I guess, that process to help us understand how we're going to, you know, have a better impact or embed this for, embed WSUD for DOC developments going forward. So some of the, I guess, the key design challenges. So when we're looking at permeable paving, but this is quite difficult for pedestrians, particularly for elderly with safety issues. So it would have to be some sort of structure that is very easy to walk on and not a trip hazard. So any, I guess, kind of rocky gravel beds, as I've pictured here, is probably not the best approach, and we'd be needing to look at some sort of pavers that can assist with that. So that's just a bit more of a design consideration there. There's also cost considerations for these, so and maintenance considerations as well that need to be factored in. Rainwater tanks, we really wanted this to be internally plumbed for the best benefits in terms of water savings, but due to our group discussions, this was removed due to the cost and, I guess, value for money in the long term, and also the possible maintenance requirements for residents. As I talked about, that car parking was something that we really wanted to look at reducing, so we could increase the green space. But as I went through before, that design preference was to include that visitor parking at the rear. We did have discussions about open carport design to allow that green connectivity and some vertical greening opportunities, but there's obvious reasons for safety and behaviour concerns that we discussed where that needed to remain. And then also I guess, looking at the comparison of having stormwater infiltration cells compared to traditional soak wells and how that would come out as well. Some of the other kind of design challenges was looking at implementation of smart meters. So one of the kind of, I guess, smart metering approaches we've been experimenting in other developments is looking at having sensors popped on the meters and a handheld app for residents to be able to track their water use in real time, as per that image I've got there. But we discussed that that's really not appropriate for the residents that are going to be living in this area. So again, it just really comes back to, I guess, making sure those design choices suit that intended occupants in the long run, and make sure that, you know, we're designing something that's for an elderly community here, as that was the decided use for these houses. I guess with any additional landscaping requirements, we needed to make sure that the maintenance team would be upskilled if there are any, I guess, different designs or different requirements from usual. And particularly, I think if we're looking at communal productive gardens and what that might mean and who's responsible for that in the long term in terms of maintenance. Ideally, it would be the residents coming together, but that's not always the case. So that's something that really, you know, presents a design challenge that needs to be worked through as the group. The water efficient fixtures and fittings is pretty much as per Mel mentioned, that DOC have been really upgrading this. We do have Water Corporation Waterwise house recommendations, which are slightly higher, so that could be something to be pushed. And then I guess some other things to discuss is looking at, you know, promotion of waterwise behaviour. So are we going to be having, you know, resident packs and I guess information provided to residents to help build that water literacy and waterwise understanding, water sensitive urban design understanding within the group that will live there. Having a program, having automatic weather-based irrigation was pretty fine, not much of a challenge there, but still something we discussed and something that might, you know, be looked at in the future. And then waterwise plant selection. So obviously that's standard for DOC construction, but I guess just looking at those additional maintenance requirements that might be for some of the different plant species selected. Okay, so as we went through our lessons learnt process together, as I said, the team and I and Chris and everybody that's been involved have all been discussing, you know, what's worked with this design process so far, what didn't, what can we do better next time, and how can we, I guess, make sure we've got practices to embed it to be better next time. And we had a workshop with Department of Communities to discuss, I guess, some of these learnings and how we can, I guess, adapt some learnings from other projects. So some of the key learnings that I think that we've encountered so far, and Mel, please chime in at any point if you want to add to any of this, but I think we felt that and we all agree that there really needs to be that early appointment of the project team and that the required skills identified early on. So whether that be landscape architects appointed right from the beginning with you know, specialist skills, or even sustainability consultants just to provide that specialist advice, it really needs to come early for the design. So I think the fact that we were coming in to help with WSUD concept a bit further along and there wasn't yet a landscape architect just made it, I guess, a bit later in the process, and we felt that earlier on would have been better, a better approach for better outcomes. We felt that those aspirations and guiding principles really need to be developed as a team. And one of the things we've encountered along the way is really having that shared understanding of terminology. And that's both in terms of, I guess, processes within Department of Communities around design and touch points, but I guess also in terms of any terminology we're talking about in water sensitive urban design language, and I guess upskilling everybody within the combined teams to have that shared understanding. There needs to be that early integration of built form and landscape intent. And I think with some of our discussions with the architects, they were really excited to go on that journey together. So even though we weren't able to, you know, change their built form at that stage of the project, I think for future projects, there would be a really good opportunity to work with the architects to be able to have that early input and that design that together from a water sensitive urban design perspective to begin with. So they seemed really engaged and really keen with any of the kind of options that we've discussed together. So that's been really great, and something that would be really good to go forward is having that early engagement together, early integration of ideas and design intent. We've also thought that having, I guess, a clear lead for the design process really helps, I guess, to ensure that the right people are included in the right meetings, the right kind of design updates along the way. And also, I guess, having an understanding of how we can best streamline that approvals process and where the best place within DOC's approvals is to embed that water sensitive urban design review times and that sort of thing. Any larger design responses need to be investigated very early on. So as this is an infill site, opportunities to, with the streetscape and that sort of thing have already kind of been decided there. So, that kind of limits, I guess, those opportunities. And it's just something that we need to be aware of, is that any, larger design or alternative water and that larger scheme sort of thing needs to be looked at early on in the design of the whole kind of precinct. As we talked about, the design and outcomes is really influenced by the physical, but also that social context. And I think that's one of the learnings we've had along the way, is that the intended community is really key to having the right design decisions and hopefully outcomes that suit their needs and requirements. That's that point there. And then I guess just that ongoing collaboration and integration of feedback from all stakeholders to ensure that the right refinement of the designs and that optimal outcomes to suit, I guess, everybody's needs to a degree is coming out. So how can we make water sensitive urban design business as usual for the Department of Communities process? So what we're looking at now, I guess, is how we can where are some of the key intervention points, and what are some of the opportunities that we can help to, I guess, embed this design process? I just wanted to share with you one of the pathways that we've been trying to, I guess, scope up with some other infill development projects. And this doesn't quite align with the DOC pathway, which is really great for us, I guess, to think about this process in more detail and how we can both have a generic process, but also a specific process to assist when it doesn't quite fit, with the client's needs, for example, Department of Communities in this instance. So this waterwise development pathway has been based on a waterwise exemplar project that we're running at an infill site in WA called 115 Hamilton Hill. And what we've been looking at is how can we align, I guess, the normal site development processes, the better urban water management framework to guide this in WA, and how can we have a new kind of, or an aligned waterwise development process that has some kind of key guidance and touch points here for the consultant team and client, developer, etc., to go through this process to kind of meet those key touch points at where water sensitive urban design decisions can be made and initiatives implemented and embedded. So we kind of work through planning, design and approvals component, and then also construction, occupation and maintenance. And so we've been looking at, I guess, this process in terms of Department of Communities and thinking about, does it work, does it not work? And as I said, it doesn't quite work, which leads us to thinking about how can we have that process for Department of Communities. I won't go into this in more detail now because I'm actually running out of time, so apologies, I've gone a little bit over. So the next steps for us now are to, I guess, continue on with the collaboration and documentation of process. So this is particularly going now into that detailed design, construction and maintenance phases. If possible, that might be a little bit too far along in the timing of things, but at least we can try and, I guess, get an understanding of how, these things might get designed, detailed design and perhaps construction. We're going to refine that implementation process to suit Department of Communities and really provide them, I guess, with material that they need to help with mainstreaming. So we've had recent meetings to think about what this might look like, and that's still, I guess, for the team and us to decide, but some ideas have included a checklist that could help with, I guess, that initial site assessment and understanding of key initiatives. I guess a checklist also to inform design. What some, I guess, generic text that could be included for design briefs to make sure different water sensitive urban design initiatives are considered early on when other things are considered, and particularly other sustainability initiatives and built form responses, to make sure it's all integrated. And is there any, I guess, opportunity to then look at some of those tender documentations and how we can update those, and also maintenance documents as well. So that's will be an output, is to assist Department of Communities, and then we'll also have next steps to deliver a project report to Water Sensitive Cities Australia, and that's really going to, I guess, have a bit of an overview of those lessons learnt as we continue on this process, and some further recommendations. Okay, so thank you.
Thanks,
Should I stop
Melissa.
sharing now? Would that
Yeah,
be?
maybe.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks both Melissas, actually, because that was a really comprehensive rundown of the project perspective and drivers from Melissa Manley, and some of the learnings and challenges and opportunities from Melissa McGrath, and how we plan to embed that going forward. I think I can see some questions there. So what I'll do is I'll just ask the two Melissas the questions. We've got about 10 minutes or so where we can take questions. So the first question I see does seem, and this will be, I think, from Melissa Manley, does seniors living have a specific requirement or guidance for accessibility and for people with disabilities? If so, do you have an understanding of the standard cost to provide this well and consistently across your developments?
Thanks for the question, Michael. Probably short answer is I don't know the standard costs, but at Department of Communities, our seniors start from 50 years of age. So with that Ageing with Choice guidelines, it's that if they do enter seniors, a seniors rated usage, is that they are able to age while they are there and not actually require dedicate or to be moved into a dedicated facility. So we do aim to build at silver livable standards as well. So that includes, those access pathways, allowing for future modifications to those homes as required. So I don't know whether I've really answered your question, but I'm not sure of the standard cost because it's all just bundled in with the standard construction now.
Thanks, Melissa. For Melissa McGrath, do you have an understanding of what percentage impervious was for each of the different layouts you presented?
Sorry, percentage of?
Impervious areas, sorry.
Not off the top of my head, but yes, we do have that. And we were at the time undergoing, I guess, a comparison of that and hopefully using some of the WSUD tools to assist with that as well. So we did start that work. It kind of got put on hold a little bit as we were finalising and going through that design process. But one of the things that we've been looking at is, because I guess those three options I showed you are kind of working with, plan, limited response, a kind of best case water-wise, and then where we ended up, we'll do the calculations, I guess, to understand what each of those look like in more detail, so we know, what further benefits we might be getting from having, more permeable paving implemented or more garden space, etc. So we did some prelim analysis, but we'll definitely have that as an output at the end of the project, ready to share. So. Thanks.
Thanks, Melissa. And if you keep in contact with the project page on our website, which we can share post this webinar, those details will come out then. We'll also post more detailed answers to some of these questions if needed post the webinar too. There's another question here. Were questions and ideas posed to elderly or possible residents to inform the assumptions regarding, for example, rainwater tanks? Possibly that's a Mel McGrath question, and Mel Manley can contribute to if needed.
So thank you for that. No, we didn't have any engagement with elderly residents on the use of rainwater tanks. And I do admit that's probably something that we didn't investigate from our end, as we were relying on Department of Communities expertise in delivering seniors housing to be able to provide us with, I guess, the best updates on that. So that probably, wasn't so much part of our investigation, but probably, I'm sure Mel can contribute to this, their understanding from experience in implementing things like that, but would definitely be something good to know, and whether, we did make the right assumption or not.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. So this is one of our lessons learned, is that we need to sort of provide an education packet and re-educate the people that we're working with internally. So throughout our design process, we'll create a design and it'll go out for comment generally with our regional officers, and they're the people that do need to maintain this property and manage this property after it's been built. And it was their feedback that they didn't want to include those rainwater tanks and they saw little value in it. Just water is relatively cheap, and I think the concern was that they would have to be cleaning the tanks and things like that, and as well as having it plumbed in. That's another thing that could go wrong. So whilst it's a shame that this hasn't happened, it was something that was perceived that it will be high maintenance for little value, which may or may not be true. And I have noticed, and from Water Corporation has put a comment in there, is that cost effectiveness for rainwater tanks in WA is actually quite low. You know, over our summer, we didn't get rainfall for 6 months, and we're getting the bulk of it during winter. And that rainwater tank, you know, in terms of the cost of water, would probably have a payoff of probably 10 to 20 years just to pay off the cost.
Yeah, definitely. And which is why we had, if they were to be installed, it would be definitely for that internal plumbing, and which is why also that, you know, if that option wasn't good, then grey water as an option for alternative water use for the increased green space was something as a next step to be able to think about as an alternative water source.
I've got a question for Mel Manley, and I'm just wondering if you could expand on how you see Department of Communities would embed the learnings that have come from the project so far, and what the learnings that we're hoping to get in the balance of the project for the balance of this calendar year. How do you see those learnings being applied into DOC processes going forward?
Yeah, so I haven't completely worked out how we're going to embed this, but what Melissa and I have talked about is once that checklist is created, I'll be speaking to our internal teams to see where that checklist is best placed to make sure that water sensitive urban design is included in that overall process, rather than as part of this project, it was almost a tack on to the current construction process. So that's where I'm going to be seeing is where exactly does this decision point need to be made. And going on from there, I'm hoping that coming out of this project, we'll have some things that we can put in our construction technical specifications that kind of point to, in our design guidelines, that kind of point to saying, okay, in non-trafficable areas or non-pedestrian areas, that we can try and put in the permeable paving and only using that hard paving in those areas that definitely need it. And also having the landscape architects as part of the procurement, having water sensitive urban design background so that they can make use of that infiltration. Most areas in Perth are sand, so we do have really good infiltration abilities here, and that's, you know, with having lower number of rainfall, the more that we can get infiltrating and sustaining our gardens, the better, in my opinion.
Sounds good, thanks, Melissa. And Melissa McGrath, how do you see the learnings from the project from JBA's perspective, maybe influencing your Waterwise pathway work or any other infill work that you're doing, either government or private-led projects?
Definitely. Thanks, Chris. I think it's so helpful. And as I said before, with that Waterwise development pathway that we've been developing, as it wasn't quite the right fit for Department of Communities, it does, I guess, help us to have, look at it in more detail and how does it need to be refined and better, I guess, adjusted to perhaps be something that can be a generic pathway, or is it best just to leave that for probably other types of development and then have a specific pathway for DOC? So I think from our end, it's something that's triggered that we need more investigation and more, I guess, refinement of that process, which is something that we were mindful of right from the beginning with it, developing it anyway. And I think having the opportunity to be able to kind of test it out in different case studies is really beneficial to think about how it might work and how we can get those optimal outcomes from such a process. So from our perspective, it's really great opportunity to be able to test it out and think about, I guess, that governance side of implementation and where those touch points are in more detail.
Awesome. I think we've got time for one more question. And I think this one would be for Melissa McGrath. If we do not place rainwater tanks, are we providing any treatment to rainwater collected? If we are not retaining the water, it will it not put pressure on the drainage network?
So no, we hadn't put specific treatment design elements in, just I guess the landscape itself, and also the, as Mel Manley mentioned, the sandy soils, there's that infiltration there, there's that pollutant, I guess, in the area isn't a huge issue and wasn't something that we really factored in as part of our design response, because it wasn't really something that the site, that was key for the site, was managing pollutants wasn't key for the site. So no, we haven't put any additional things in there, but I guess through the landscape approach will help with that.
We are also trying to get those drainage cells under the ground in replacement of soak wells, so that that'll capture that runoff from the roofs of the house and the garage, so that it won't be going directly into the drainage network with any luck.
Oh, yes, sorry. And yes, we're definitely looking to minimise as much as we can into the broader drainage network. So sorry, yes, that's why the spaces within the whole design, we're looking at optimising as much as we can that localised infiltration throughout the whole development as often as we can through surface treatments and increased garden areas. But yeah, for that particular treatment prior to at the site isn't something that we've looked at. So yeah, thanks, just to clarify.
Thank you. I think we'll close off the Q&A session now. So thanks everyone for your questions, and thanks Melissa Manley and Melissa McGrath for your answers. Just a quick plug for our next webinar. We've got a webinar around building community water literacy. We've actually had to reschedule this one to from late July into Friday the 13th of September to 12:30 to 1:30. So if you're interested in that one, then just scan that QR code and register. It should be a good one. We'll have Dr. Lucy Richardson from the Monash Climate Change Communication Hub, and also my colleague Kian Nguyen from Water Sensitive Cities Australia speaking on this webinar. And if you're interested in all the upcoming webinars, we've got webinars essentially scheduled out until November this calendar year. So take a look at that. Once again, scan the QR code there. And that just leaves me to thank the participants today for coming along, the presenters today, both Melissa McGrath and Melissa Manley. Thank you very much. And also thank you to the team in the background that helped run and organise all these events for you. Hope everyone has found this useful, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.